this is like hemline. Consider this a hemline. Then you define where do you place center front, somewhere here, and now you absolutely have to be certain then that this is true 90-degree angle. If there's any deviance from true 90-degree angle, the whole thing will be skewed. And you cannot define the grain lines of the fabric according to center front, hemline, perpendicular system. So the plumb line system. Okay, so you measure from center front, so this is the hem and center front, and you start measuring from center front towards other direction, whatever your measurement is that you measured as a circumference plus ease, 2 inches divided by 2. So it could be something like 32, 34, 36 inches divided by 2. So that may be, for example, could be 19 and a half, something like that. So here it is, you measure and then square up again another true 90-degree angle, and do not deviate from that true 90-degree angle, not one bit. So here's first 3 lines: hemline, center front, and center back. Maybe I should have darker, stronger lines, these pencil lines, kind of. So here is hem, then center front, and center back. Then we need to define where is the side seam. Those are a little bit stronger lines. You see better. So first you divide this distance from hem from center front to center back into 2 halves and shift a little bit towards, like 1/4 inch towards back. Just weave it towards back, so that you end up, if this shift is 1/4 inch, you end up having front 1/2 inch wider than back. Why this is important? When you look at the person straight in front, you don't want to see the seams on the side. So little shift towards back keeps the back more hidden. You don't see the seams. So that's the reason. Another way, of course, is to measure it is, of course, always if you have the front hip arc plus ease and back hip arc plus ease, and measure this way, the ease for each section is 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch on 2 sections, and then each section is like 1/4 of the skirt, then the total is 2. Easiest way to get the whole width of the draft, and this is very important because if you make a measuring mistake here, it may cause the whole thing go wrong. This is crucial to get it right from the beginning. Okay, so yeah, so then again, absolutely true 90-degree angle. This is where you really have to make sure you have true 90-degree angles, not just about so. Okay, then we need to know what is the length of the skirt, how long you consider basic skirt to be. It's not the mini skirt, it's not the maxi skirt, it's not the midi skirt, it's the classic knee length, right in the middle of the knee. Coco Chanel consider it, that's always her right length of the skirt, right, ending right in the middle of the kneecap. And then when the mini became fashion in 60s, well, she didn't want to change her skirt length. And of course, she lost quite a bit of business. She was not the same anymore. Then came those like Mary Quant in England and others who used mini, very short skirts, but Coco Chanel didn't want to change. But her understanding of skirt length, ideal skirt length, is still like the classic length of the skirt, considered the most becoming for most people. So it's about 20 to 22 inches. So something between 20 and 22 inches. So if you measure at center front, 20 or 22 inches. That would be somewhere here. And then square in a little bit. Just a little, here it is. I think it was, did I say maybe 22 inches, and this one is waist level. Waist level. And from waist level down, measure 7 inches for hip level. And again, this is a square throughout the draft, from beginning to the end. Throughout. And here is hip level. Okay, then we need to know how much is center back length. How much do we measure from center back, and how much is the side seam height? How much do we measure up from side seam, and how much for center back? So this is where you don't have to measure in most cases. Standards work pretty well for that. So if the front is 22 inches, back would be 21 and a half. So it's a little bit lower than center front. And side seam would be 22 and a quarter, a little bit higher than center front. So you measure only center front, and then center back would be ½ inch lower. ½ inch lower, and side seam would be ¼ inch higher. So this one is ¼ inch higher than front, and this one is ½ inch lower than So again, these are now waist levels for the back and waist level for the side seam. Those are the positions here now. Okay? And then we need to know how much is the difference between hip measurement and waist measurement. So usually there's some difference. Sometimes it's very much different, and sometimes it's a little bit different. It depends of the individual measurements. So again, you can look at how much was the hip circumference and look at how much was your waist circumference. Hopefully the waist is a little bit less. How much less? That varies individually. And then the difference should be put into 3 places in this draft. There could be front darts, there could be back darts, and then something is taken away on the side seam area. That's how we create that hip curve. So hip curve will take some amount away from the difference, and the rest we can have in the 2 darts. So if we start with the side seam hip curve, this hip curve, at the side seam you can measure 3/4 and 3/4 to both sides of the side seam, and then we can already draw what would be the hip curve here. Kind of mild curve, not very bumpy, softly, mildly curvy. So this is the hip curve, both sides done the same way, so they are like almost like mirror images to each other. And here's the side seam. So this has already removed 1.5 inches from the amount that we have to accommodate between waist and hip measurements. Make sense? So if you have, for example, if you have, what would it be? If you have, for example, total, what would be your dart intake amount? So if the difference between hip measurement and waist measurement, if it's like, for example, if the difference is 5 inches, let's say it's 5 inches, and you have removed 1.5 inches. So now you have 3.5 inches left. And then that 3.5 inches could be divided into half for front and half to the back. So in 3 areas. This one is the first we remove that difference. Okay. So now we need to figure out how much is the waist measurement compared to hip measurement, and you deduct that 1.5 immediately, and the rest will be divided for front and back darts. Okay? So ideally those darts shouldn't be too big. They should not be huge. Make it kind of, for example, front darts would be 1 and maybe 1.25 for back darts, but they should not be much more than 3/4 per dart. So don't have huge darts. Then there's something wrong with your measuring if you end up having 2 or 3 inch wide darts. So keep them kind of small-ish. So first, then we need to know where is the beginning for the darts. What do you suggest would be the first place for the dart? Where would you start it?
Princess line?
Princess line is the measurement. And if you measure from center front to this princess line on your dress form, you probably find out it's something like around front would be around 3 inches, and back would be maybe 2 7/8 or 2 3/4. That's about what 10 and 8 have. Okay, so to start measuring the darts, first connect front to side seam, center front to side seam. Again, it's a very mild, slightly curvy line, and center, back, and side seam. Again, mildly curvy line. Okay, so mildly curvy lines, front and back, from center front to side seam, and center back to side seam. And then start measuring dart placement first, around 3 inches for front, that's the beginning, and back will be something like 2 7/8 or 2 3/4, so close to the same. So that's the beginning for measuring the dart intakes. So if your first dart could be something like 3/4, don't make it much more. If the total is 1.5, then the 2 darts, each one will be 3/4 or less. So don't make these very big. So here is 1, and then mark the middle point. Measure 1.25 inches. Measure 1.25 inches between the darts, and then measure the second one and mark middle point.
How far is the first dart from the center front again?
It's the dart placement measurement, which is from center front to princess line. Okay? And 1.25 inches is placed between the 2 darts. Okay? Same way, measure the back darts. Maybe one is, if this one is 1, mark the middle point, measure 1.25 between, and then the second one and the middle point. Okay, so it depends how much is the difference between hip measurement and waist measurement. And first step is to reduce 1.5 inches, which is like 3/4 and 3/4, both sides from side seam. That's first part that is deducted from the difference. And then you divide the remaining into 2 parts. One would be for front and the other one would be for the back. And depending, sometimes it depends of the shape a little bit, body shape. Should the front darts be equal with the back, which is probably okay, but as a rule, make the front darts wee bit smaller than the back darts. So again, all that comes from the natural shapes of the body. And as you know, they vary, but we are looking for possible ideal standards that should work fairly well for most people. So that's the purpose of industry standards, to create some standards that most people would accept and would work for them well. So industry cannot make all garments individually fitting to every single person on the planet. But they can kind of look at what would be a good average that would work for most people, so they can sell them to as many people as possible without doing individual custom tailoring. So yeah, that's a whole different thinking. A good thinking though. Okay, then next step is to add the darts, put them in place. Front darts, draw center lines of the darts parallel to center front. Parallel line to center front for center lines of the dart, and same thing on the back, parallel to center back, center line of the dart, and then we measure the length of the dart. Now again, due to most people's shaping, the belly tends to be a little bit higher than the bum. They are not exactly on the same level. So that's why the front darts are a little bit shorter and the back darts are a little bit lower. Also, if you look at center back and center front, the back is a little bit lower than front. So back darts are longer and front darts are shorter because of the often commonly understood body shapes. 3.5 for front and 5.5 for the back. So measure down from waist, 3.5 inches, and draw the final dart legs. So this is often where people struggle to have the right understanding of the concept, how to measure dart intakes, how much dart intakes you should keep. So that is often most confusing of this whole thing. So 5.5 for the back, 5.5 for the back darts. They are a little bit longer. Sometimes they could be a little bit wider on the base. So this is 5.5. Okay, now we have pretty much the darts here. And that's basically what we need for crafting the skirt. So all we got to do is test it. How do we test it? You can do paper fitting. If you cut this whole thing out here like this and leave this side seam closed and close this part, close this and close the darts, then you can easily see if your waistline is right, if your hip curve is the right shape, and then very often you have to define the final baseline. Yes.
For the hip curve, how far down would you say it goes until it is parallel to the center?
Right, until it reaches the side seam. This is about 2 inches. So here, about 5 inches. Yeah. Don't make it bumpy. Make it very smooth. Not too round. Okay? So paper fitting, close the darts, cut this out, tape it together, and close the darts, and leave a little bit of extra paper here on the base, because when we close the darts, the baseline will be kind of choppy. It's not the ideal shape. So we have to redraw the waistline after closing the darts. So leave some paper here, extra, on the waistline, somewhere here, so that when you close the darts, redraw the waistline smooth, nicely round, smooth. You can get the right shape later. But this is often good to do it after fitting. So if you again, we want to, if you want to, kind of optional, you can cut the pattern out and then cut it of muslin, half front, half back, not the whole skirt. This is test fitting. And add seam allowances. Side seam, waistline, seam allowances. And close the darts and close the side seam and see how well it fits on the dress form. And then when you have a really good pattern, you can cut it out of manila without seam allowances. It becomes your very own personal skirt sloper. And when you trust it, it fits this dress form very, very perfectly. You can use it maybe when you come to line development, you can use it, start making few skirts. You can trust it, you know it works. So there is benefit of this, definitely. We will produce some slopers that you can use later on. So make them really good. Make them so that you can rely on them without checking everything. Save some time in future by paying attention, really making it right now. So yeah. Any questions about the basic skirt draft? Is it doable? Yes? Yes?
So the length from waist to hem is 22 inches?
Or less.
Or,
20 to 22. That's about the range it might be, most probably. For taller people, 22 could be less, 21 or